Hello, I'm Elwyn Davis, live in Pittsburgh, Kansas, and I grew up in Cameron, Missouri, and joined the church in 1950 when I was 8 years old. I'd like to tell a story about 70 Bob Turner and how he interacted with the youth in the Cameron Community of Christ Church. Then it was known as RLDS. I don't know the exact years he was assigned to Far West Stake and lived in Cameron, but it was sometime in the early 1950s. I roughly knew that a new church appointee had been assigned to Far West Stake when I was a child, but I didn't pay much attention to that fact. That appointee was Bob Turner, son of Merle and Vernon Turner, who had settled in Cameron after retiring. Bob's family decided to live in Cameron, and I remember my parents visiting them in their home one time. Shortly after that visit, out of the blue, I got a telephone call from Bob Turner. He asked me if I would like to come to his house to help him with some woodwork. Remember, I was just a boy. His father, Vernon, was a master craftsman with wood and metal, and Bob had apparently learned well from his father. I didn't know a thing about woodworking. I was probably younger than fourth grade. I think I had been baptized, but I'm not sure of the timeline. And Bob trusted me to do the things I could do, like hold a tape measure to make measurements, hold a wooden plank as he sawed it. He also let me sand the wooden pieces. Bob didn't talk a bit about church, but I went home after that feeling like I truly belonged. It wasn't too long after that time that he organized an archery club for interested church children and their friends. He taught us principles of shooting with a bow and arrow, emphasizing safety above all else. He taught us how to repair arrows that had damaged tips. And no better shot than some of us were, we damaged a lot of tips. The big project was for him to order lemon wood for us to make our own bows. But before we could do that, he was transferred to another assignment. Again, just as with the woodworking that he did with me, he didn't talk gospel with us. He lived the gospel by making each of us feel important and that he cared about each one. Well, as you can tell, I've never forgotten those encounters with the young 70 Bob Turner. Decades later, I accidentally ran into him when my wife and I were visiting Reunion at Camp Far West, the first weekend of camp. I saw him, and rather than go up to him and introduce myself, I thought I would be clever, and I asked him, "Do you know who you are?" He looked a little surprised by that, but identified who I was, even though it was decades older than when I lived in Cameron. There's more to this story, and that involves his father, Vernon. When I was a junior and senior in high school, I became interested in astronomy, and I learned that Vernon had made several telescopes. He encouraged my interest, and I did make a small reflecting telescope, 4¼ inch diameter mirror. I figured out an ingenious way to make an equatorial mount from an Altazimuth Army surplus gun mount. Vernon helped me make the tubing and lens holding part of an eyepiece, so I had commercial eyepieces and one of my own fashioning. I entered my telescope with descriptive posters in our high school science fair, and I won first place. So my telescope was then entered in the St. Joseph's Junior College Science Fair, and I won that also. One thing that made it especially meaningful to me was that my first place medal was given to me by Evan Augustine. He was a high priest in the church and one of the leading ministers at Far West Stake reunions. He was also a physics professor at the junior college. That college is now Missouri Western State University, and the math and science building on their campus is named after Evan Augustine. But had it not been for Vernon Turner's encouragement and help, I would not have had my first experience of seeing one of our leading ministers as a success in his field. I saw that a life of ministry and a professional life outside the church could go hand in hand. Thank you for your attention.